as we go through. So let's just kick off and get going. Okay, so the first thing I just need to cover off, and I said in the invite that we're not going to be going into a great deal about actual individual products, but we need to give a summary of what the Fanvil products can do. And most of you are pretty much fully aware of this. We could divide it into your SIP desk phones. A lot of people say that the desk phone is a dying breed and we're all going to be soft switch, we're all going to be this, we're all going to be that. And to a degree, that's probably going to be true. But as the applications change, when voice over IP first started coming out, people are just chucking voice over IP phones on it, which are pretty much like an SLT phone, as an analog phone. You know, you can ring somebody on it, it would ring at you, and you could, basically that's it. You didn't have a lot of BLF, you didn't have color screens, you didn't have video, you didn't have anything like that. So a lot of what we're trying to do in this presentation is just talk about adding value. Instead of just going out there and selling a phone system, or instead of just going out and selling a door phone, we're talking about bundling a whole bunch of things together. This is the first presentation I want to do, which is just sticking to intercoms. The second presentation is going to be about paging and combinations thereof. So we've got our SIP desk phones. We've got our SIP door access control. Now, the way Fanvil split them out is they like splitting it into the video versus intercom, e.g. non-video. The video is pretty cool. It's actually very exciting in what you can do with it, and it works exceedingly reliably across the phones. On the phones, it's an X6U up, barring the H5W, which we'll talk about later, and they can actually receive videos, etc. The SIP intercoms are anything from the i10 little plastic box, which for the price is unbelievable, through to the metal K10 boxes, which we'll be talking about. Value for money, can't beat them, and our competition are struggling to keep up with us. Well, they are over here anyway. And then we go into the SIP public address system, which I'll be talking about in the next presentation. But again, it's how we apply the different products and what we're going to do with them. So to split your intercom phones up, the I-series phones, we've got the i33V. I don't know if anyone's used one of them yet. We've thrown a few out in the market out here. And one of the slides I just quickly sort of put together today just to show you how we used it, because it was interesting, definitely different from an i31 and an i23. Then, so the hardened phones, you've got the I-56, 53, 52, and 51. We've deployed about 4 buildings now, multi-tenanted, multi-storied buildings with the I-52, I think. Let me have a think. Was it the I-52? Yeah, it was the I-52. It seems to be the flavor of the month. Pretty price driven. But the I-51W, I believe, is on a bulk type project thing, and the rest are just buy them in. I haven't had time to have a good sit down and look at the I-56A, but that looks pretty good. Then you've got the I-30s, the I-18s, I-16s, and I-10s, all intercom. On the other side, your audio only, the I-23Ss. The I-23S in New Zealand is probably the fastest moving I-series phones we've got. Most of them go into hospitality or healthcare, and I'll elaborate more into that later on. And then we head down to the I-20s, I-12s, the bulletproof tank, the I-12. That seems to be the one of the more favorites for the external area, particularly in South Auckland, in Auckland. A little bit rough down this end of the country. And then we've got the I-10 and its various, the video and or the dual button type mode. So let's start going through this. A couple of things I need to point out, okay? When people look at the IP54 and the IP65 and the IK10 ratings, which you can see at the bottom of this page, people tend to go, oh yeah, it's waterproof. Oh yeah, it's this proof. They don't really quite get it. They don't understand it. So let's just look at the IP54. Basically, it's basically talking about partial protection against dust and other particles that may ingress. Okay, so it's dust ingress. They're not waterproof. They're not showerproof. They are basically dustproof. Now, does that mean they roll over if they get into a bit of a decent fog? No, they're a solid little unit and they work well, but it's not waterproof, okay? Only dustproof. An I-65, people seem to think is waterproof. They are not waterproof, okay? Some submarines are not waterproof. The I-65, basically, if you look at the technical side, is saying that it's tested from splashing water, not torrent or stream of water, splashing water from any direction, tested for a minimum of 10 minutes. And an oscillating spray against ingress, certain amount of ingress is permitted, okay? So when you actually open up these phones and have a look at them, you'll see that the circuit boards are all covered up with a layer of protection. The speakers are covered and the microphones have got a certain amount of protection on them. But they are not waterproof, okay? So there are situations, for example, if you put it on the side of a building on the west coast, pointing out to sea, and a westerly's blowing, and the rain's coming in vertically, after about a couple of days of that, certain things like microphones might get full of water. They'll dry out in the sun and start working again, we've found, but the speech just drops off until the sun hits it and it dries out, okay? Silly things like that. IK10, the popular thing going around initially was the axe rated. Yay, someone can hit them with an axe. Well, some of them were pretty much built that way, to be honest with you. But it's IK10, which basically means that you can drop it from a height of 400 millimeters with no major issues. Now, in saying that, got all the technical stuff out of the way. Oh, apart from one thing, let's talk about the I-65 and weatherproofing and waterproofing and all that sort of carry on. Without being too pointed, the weather or the water ingress resistance of any IP65 device is only as good as you, the installers, installed it, or your installers installed it. Okay, so that means if it's sitting on back of a stucco rough concrete wall and it's got a little foamy pad there and water can pour down the back of it, do not be surprised if the water gets into the cabling and gets into the plugs, etc. So when you're installing one of these things, please plan it. So as I said, that's the technical side out of the way. Basically, I've been around for a wee while on these things, and I've got to admit, I love them. I think they're a fantastic product. They've put them all together. There's a huge variety of them. And I particularly like the metal stuff. For example, the i12. It's a tank. You can hit it hard. I mean, we've got these things in South Auckland schools. We've got them in South Auckland village centres. And this is not a high socio-economic area. That's all I'd like to say about it. And there's a bunch of little thugs running around. And they see something like this and go pretty, and they want to start hitting it for some reason. They stand up very, very well. Okay, but again, we'll talk more about that. So quickly getting through the various models, we've got the i10, i10SD, which has got the 2 buttons on it. We've got the i10S, which is just an intercom unit. i12, which is also the intercom, but we've also got a 2-button option if so needed. You got your S20. So this is an IP65 unit again, but again, it's the sort of thing I wouldn't throw out in the wild, wild west, e.g. out in an external environment where there are South Aucklanders around. They basically can be damaged because they are a plastic type chassis, but it's got the keypad, it's got the swipes, etc., etc. Then we've got the i23S, probably one of my favorite type designs because this thing is bulletproof. It's got the heavy metal surrounds around the outer edge. You pull it apart, it just, I don't know, it exudes quality for me. It's been very, very well put together. I remember seeing the first generation of them and I was still impressed then, and these ones are even better. So again, we'll be talking about this, but these have got no camera, but they're great for outdoors. You can put a video linkage to a third-party camera. They've got the keypad for PIN numbers and dialing phone numbers, depending on the setup you've got, and a built-in RFID IC card reader, IP65 and IK10 rated. Then we've got our i10 video. Again, a fantastic little unit for the price that you're paying for it. Your reseller can give you all the pricing on that, but there's nothing in our market that actually touches this particular model, and you'll see the uses that we're putting them towards, and it's catching a lot of our opposition off track. Then we head into the i16, which is one of your video ranges. You can see the various lists of what it can do with high definition video, high definition audio, etc. It's got 2 built-in relays and short circuit input-output interfaces. Then we head into the i30s, which are again all your video units, through from the 30, the 32V, the 31S, which is from the video side, again quite popular, and the i33V, which people were sort of wondering where we're going to apply these things. We'll show you where we can put them in the market. Then we head through to the PA2. Don't know if any of you have had a lot to do with the PA2. It's used quite commonly over here in schools for various applications. We've got the advent of the PA3. I'm hoping by the time I do the next presentation, the new software will be available on the PA3. I'll admit to you, honestly, because I'm a distributor, and basically help the guys sell this. PA3 didn't burn the house down when I first saw it. Yes, it's got some great high definition video, and we're designing it for deploying music, high definition music, etc., sound through the LAN network. The interesting things I did notice about it once I got into it was that it's actually got a scheduler in it. I don't know if you've ever had a look at it, but there's a scheduler in it, and it's designed also to interface to PA systems. And the scheduler works quite brilliantly as it currently is as an interface. So there's a few things that I've asked the factory to do, and they've agreed to do it. And basically that entails, and I don't think the factory's online, which they're not, so I'm sweet, I can go for it. So basically what we've asked them to do is to enhance the scheduler a little bit better, so we could turn it on or off for holidays. We've asked them so that we can multicast across the network. So not only can we poke it out at the paging, that we can multicast it. And we've asked that the 2 buttons on it be enabled to play pre-recorded messaging, e.g. Lockdown and evacuation. Now, do not sell that as what I've just told you. What I've just given you is a little bit of a heads up of something coming. And it's actually quite exciting because it gives a real nice little flavor. But I had to tell you about that one because I know a lot of people, particularly from my resellers, are going, well, what do we use this thing for? You know, the PA2 does everything the PA3 does. Well, it doesn't. And again, we'll start working through various things. I've got the the A32i there as well. I've only just got one over here. I'm testing it at the moment. That's basically, it's an Android. It's got a lot of buttons. It can do a lot of multicasting, etc. It's there. It's coming. If it hasn't hit Australia yet, it will do. And same with New Zealand, it will do eventually. But we'll just have to wait and see how that one goes. So I will organise to send out a PDF of this presentation to all of you. This just gives you a little bit of a overview of what and where does when. So I'm just going to point out a couple of things. I particularly like the ONVIF capability, 3rd line down. That basically allows you to connect any Fanvil device you've got to your network security camera recorder. Okay, it's a standardized unit, and we'll talk about that. So that's a bit of a highlight. I've got some screenshots, etc., on how that sort of looks and works. It's got all your relays, your PoE, etc. Again, the only thing I'd say about PoE switch when deploying any voice over IP, not all PoE switches are created equal. Watch out for your wattage output versus the number of ports that you can plug in. The number of times I've had people who, particularly with paging, who get a 36 switch Cisco switch or something wonderful like that, that's got all of 200 to 250 watts, and we should be powering for one of the PA unit for 15 watts per item, and they sit there idly doing wonderful things. They work and you can ping them, you can do everything, and suddenly you go paging and half of them will just roll over and restart because the PoE is overwhelmed. Okay, the tamper-proof protection levels, got all that. Auto provision, and you've also got the deployment server from Fanvil. Talks down through the various zip lines, etc. I'll let you go through them. I'll move along here a little bit. PA3, MP3 broadcasting, yep, etc. These are well worth looking at if you haven't looked at them yet. The I-52s and the I-53s, etc. It's again not something that and we've traditionally done in the comms area. And what we're saying is that we can basically use these to add on to your sale in a building. A lot of times you need a voice over IP box to drive your intercom units, etc. So this is all comes together again, what we're going to be talking about. And these are just the stats, etc. on that. Okay, the phones. You've seen the phones before. No real surprise here. Video are basically from X6U up, okay? Now, the hospitality. Pay attention to these ones. These are interesting. They're very popular. The one thing I would point out is that you've got your, now let's get this right, got your H3s, okay, and your H5s, okay, and now they've come out in white and in black. The one that really does excite me a lot is the H5W, okay. Now, it's got two things, the H5W. Number one, it's got a 2.4 wireless connection, so you can connect it into a room via the hotel's wireless, okay? It's not ideal that it's 2.4 for a voice perspective, but in a room, generally, there's not going to be a whole heap of co-channel interference. And saying that, someone can immediately pull out an example that there was. Yes, I know, it happens. But getting back to more the point, the thing that actually excites me about these phones is the screens will accept video, whereas your standard H5 won't. This actually can have a video on it as well now, which is actually very exciting, and you can have that in the two colors. Depending on your local market, will depend whether or not you'll have one or both. Okay, the H2U phones are used in the intercom as well, so they've just been put in there as well. So let's talk about solutions. First of all, basically, the intercoms, they open doors, okay? This is just a quick diagram I did once for a training session with a news reseller. And in his particular case, he was going into an existing door access control package, and they just wanted a phone out the front. So all we did is connect the relay across to the dry contact relay to the exit button, which happened to be sitting next to the door, which made life a bit easier. So effectively, the options you've got on the access controls are a dry contact relay. And basically you push the button, rings the main phone. Main phone says, yes, what do you want? Opens the door, and by dialing post DTMF digit, and it triggers the door and opens the door, okay? Simple enough. Other option you've got is that the unit will actually put out a 12-volt power from PoE, okay, but it comes with a number of cautions, okay. I've got this type of setup on my front door in my office, okay. It uses a toggle switch, very much like this one that's here, and the whoopsie daisy, get back up here. And the thing I'd like to point out to you, it's a maximum load of 12 volts, of course, 650 milliamp, okay. It's not a high-powered unit. And if you start putting a lock on it, which drags down a ton of power. Let's think, I don't know, mag lock or something stupid like that. Something, or there's these heavier locks that have got like a piston or something they have to pull out. Do not, I repeat, do not connect your Fanvil up to those things. Stick with the 12 volts and an external power unit to drive the heavier locks. So if you are going to use this 12 volt, and it can be a lifesaver, I assure you, it can get you out of the poo real easily. But be cautious, because when you cook one of the power outputs of these phones and it's been overloaded because you haven't checked what sort of lock you're putting on them, I'm sorry, but that ain't covered under warranty. Okay, so any other questions about that, you need to go and talk to your local distributor. And Aussie, for you Kiwi guys, give me a call. Okay. So the other thing I just wanted to point out, the external power, it's got a little bit of information about the output here, about how many outputs and etc., and which units can supply the 12 volts. Other way to do a connection to a door phone is so that the unit can send a URL/URI event. Okay, this is used in a scenario where we've got a door that we need to open, cannot be accessed via any cabling from the iSeries intercom or phone at all. You just can't get to it at all. So what we can do is we can actually send a command across the network and say connect it to a PA2, which has actually got a relay on board, and then we can tell it to do a door release command across. Now we can also do that directly from the telephone. A telephone can do the same thing directly to it, but otherwise you can have your intercom doing the controlling thereof. Just bouncing into the video area, these are the units that have got video, and I'm telling you that they work fantastically. The object of the game on this is that you're installing a video intercom so that when someone rings at the front door, your nurse, if it's in a hospital ward or in a retirement village, or your receptionist, if you're in a doctor's surgery now, and stop the nasty COVID people coming in. So you've got to see them and you can talk to them and make sure they're not. It could be a night porter or anything like that. So they can actually see the person that is calling them. Now, as I said, from the X6U up, you can see the video. You can actually, even on some Wi-Fi phones now that are coming out, and we're hoping to have one soon. We've got one here where we use, it can have it on its screen. Now it's pretty tiny, don't get me wrong, but it works well. But the second part of it is that why wouldn't you connect it into the customer security system or have it connected into the customer security? It's pretty straightforward. And that means that in that area that door phone is, it's actually is recording 24/7. And what does it look like? That's kind of what it looks like here. This particular phone is a i23S. It is sitting out the front of our office, and it is just sitting there looking at a car park on a busy COVID lockdown 4-day. There is just nothing there at this point in time, but it just sits there 24/7. There's actually a infrared, I think, spotlight sitting above that roof, and the whole place is bathed in infrared, and the camera in the Fanvil just loves it. Had someone about 2 years ago, because this one's been outside controlling that little toggle lock now for about 2.5 years. And someone during the weekend decided to dump some rubbish and parked with the number plate basically pointing straight at the camera while they did the tipping thing. Just pulled it off the main recorder, sent it to the police, and his problem's gone. So it just adds value so you can see what's going on out there. So let's start talking about some solutions. We want to talk about a list of things, including the intercom system, security, emergency calls, visitor at reception intercoms, interdepartmental communication, access control department for personnel, car parks, restricted areas, remote control doors, communication access control for buildings, apartment common areas, hotel access, medical centres, help points in large shops, help and emergency points in car parks, health care centres, hospital, etc., etc., etc. Really, when it boils down to it, there is no limit to where you can apply these. It's not like a phone where I need a desk phone or I need a wall phone. These things can take over where traditional phones perhaps have been. But nowadays, where particularly with the lockdowns we're getting, the world moving forward is going to be entirely different from what we've had before. So a lot of people now want security. They want to make sure that they're checking who's coming in, and it's all going to be about safety and health and safety, which is a word that we need to use a lot more. So application scenarios. So over the last year, we have used the Fanvil for nurse call. And that was the i10s. Actually, a nurse call company brought them off us because they had they were SIP. They didn't have anything that was SIP. So all they needed to do was ring their nurse call system. So they actually brought about 200, I think it was, stripped the cases off and put them into their own units, and then away they went. That was all good. Broadcasting your control center, broadcasting for voice, particularly in schools. Alarms, lockdown 1s, lockdown 2s type scenarios, parking lots that they've been used in, emergency bells. We've had them sitting on factory machines so that if an event happened on the machine and it needed attention, it triggered a PA2 and which set off a light and rang somebody. Well, you know, multi-million-dollar machines. They just needed them to be immediate because people were walking around the machine floor. It was a healthcare factory, that one. We're beginning to see them going into individual homes. We're seeing them going into authorized to make sure people who are going into certain areas, particularly shopping malls, etc., that type of thing, are authorized, and even just a quick help desk. So let's just hit on to the first one. Multi-story building. This came out of a healthcare. This is a healthcare retirement village type scenario. Multi-story buildings with a residence and apartments. They had common areas, etc., which used to be opened, but now they can't keep them open because they need security, people wandering in, that type of thing. So essentially, there's an i23 phone sitting at the doorway. And in this particular case, it was connected to a large PBX system, which was, well, it's an IP PBX system. And that was actually feeding the residents' individual telephones, as well as the Wi-Fi phones, the hospitals' phones, etc. So it was all one common thing, but the village was supplying DDIs and phone numbers, etc., for the residents. So in this case, what they had was a resident was, say, in their apartment 102. They would go up to the phone, dial star 102, and it would ring the phone that was there. And the phones are basically just the H2U phone, just the entry level, and they could answer it, dial the code to trigger the door, and they let the people in. The codes worked as level 1, 2, 3, for example, level 2, room 5, level 2, room 3, etc., etc. Okay, and the solution basically involved the X2Us, the i23s, and they threw in an X210i, and that was because of its extra intercom system that's on it. I don't know if you're aware of it, if you've had a look at it. There is it'll actually host up to 99 SIP endpoint devices. It's not a PABX. It simply allows interdialing in between the unit. It's got no external lines or anything like that. It just manages being able to make calls. So again, another option there if you want to look at it. If you've got any queries, questions you'd like to ask, just let me know. The next buildings now, as I said earlier, 4 of these went in. This was, again, a pretty straightforward environment. They didn't use the X210i in this case. They just used a entry-level PBX, and that involved the The i23S, sorry, it was actually an i31, but this time it's just been copying and pasting stuff quickly to get it going. But in this case, they used an i31S and they used the i53W phones, okay? Same scenario. They're using the tables inside the Fanvil Intercom. They were dialing the actual panels, okay? So the panels would ring, you would go over and answer them. The picture of the person would appear on the screen and press the key-shaped key, the lock, and the door would open, okay? So this was the entire solution. It was basically a PBX and it was the Fanvil panels and the Fanvil intercom. Okay, you could have used an X210i to do the intercom work, but in this particular case, we used a PABX to do the job. Okay, so these have so far, there's 4 of them that have gone in. There's been apartment buildings, 2 new apartment buildings and 2 healthcare villages that they've headed into now. The reception of them has been exceptional. The response to the abilities, what they can do, and the pricing has also been quite exceptional. Another apartment building, now this is a retrofit. Now by law over here, they have to be able to, when they've got an apartment, be able to secure it. Okay, so in this particular building, there was a very old intercom system that nobody knew what to do with. It was half broken, and the phones in the apartments were just falling apart, and it had no category 5 or category 6 cable in it. It had no network in it whatsoever. So in this case, what went in was an i23S, and we used the resident cell phones. Okay, now we connected directly to the i23, just an entry-level telco. Okay, a cheap one. It came in sort of like a package of so many hundreds of hours or hundreds of minutes on it. For the local guys here, we use 2Talk in this case. Put it on like a $30 or $40 a month package. It didn't have any internet in the building that we could use, so we used I think it was a 4G or an LTE router, and they set up a remote access to it, and it was managed by the building managers. And the whole cost of the thing, the capital they paid for, but the ongoing costs of the SIM card, etc., and the calls was basically absorbed into the body corporate. Okay, so again, it was a solution that worked. It met the needs, and all they have to do is remote into the browser and to update the cell phone numbers on the individual apartments, which is a relatively easy job to do. Okay, now this was like an owned body corporate apartment. It wasn't a hotel. So again, it's sort of what application did they need, and that's the sort of solution we built up for them. They're quite happy, and it got us in the door of a building management outfit that the reseller is slowly working through to get other buildings done, and we just sit down behind and help them out whenever we need to or can. This one's from yesterday. Now this one is using a Fanvil i33V, okay? And I'll admit I struggled what to do with this one initially, but this has got 2 relays, okay? Big deal, you say. Well, most of them don't. This one's got 2 relays with total independent control on how they work, okay? So the scenario we had was, it's again a healthcare village, and it was a building, and this particular healthcare village decided that the 5th floor level would be a penthouse, okay? Because, just because you're old doesn't mean if you want to give your money to your kids, you might want to actually, live it up. So they brought the penthouse. Now the lift goes into the penthouse and opens up in the central penthouse, okay, inside of it. Okay, so that's how they get into it. The other level 1, 2, 3, 4 are for more the common folk. They're the ones that were buying. Oh, don't get me wrong. These are beautiful building, beautiful village, but the penthouse was the premium. So what we did is we used the tables again to dial the individual phone numbers again, just like the previous example we gave you. But this time what we gave it was a different code. So one code when they dialed, we basically said that triggered relay 1. Relay 1 triggered the front door and let people in. For the penthouse, they had a different code, and we could actually assign the code to be associated or not associated with I think it's called the EGS table that's in it. So we had a phone number associated to the 3-digit number that they dialed. So when somebody rang the penthouse number, they dialed this different command code, and what it did, it triggered both relay 1 and relay 2 at the same time. Relay 1 opened the door, relay 2 triggered the lift and called the lift to the ground and unlocked the 5th floor so they could get into the 5th floor. Okay, so that came out of the blue with just a quick inquiry on 2 relays. We did a bit of research, etc., and spoke to Fanvil about it, and in the end we came up with a slightly different solution than we started off with, but it works exceedingly well. So yeah, have this unit is for apartment buildings is probably going to be the choice because it's got a whole lot more capability than, for example, an i31s. Okay, so again, sticking around the apartment buildings, depending on what you've got, you might have seen this diagram before or not, I'm not sure. But so where could we put an intercom phone? Well, we could put it at the main door. We could put it at a gate. We could put it in a car park underneath on the barrier arms, if we so wish. Heading up to the apartment, we could actually put an i10 V if we wanted on the outside of the actual apartment. So just because you buzz somebody on the front door, you might want them to use your i10 as a doorbell so you can see who they are before you open your front door. We could, inside the unit, we could use anything from the i51W to the i56A for panels. And we could also use a H5W, which is the wireless unit. We don't have to use the wireless capability, but we could use the video that's sitting on the H5W. Okay, so again, depending on the building, depending on the complex that you're working with, will depend on how much do they want it cheap as chips, or do they actually want it to be more top end and give a lot more, particularly in these multi-million-dollar apartments. This is nothing. And it's the sort of thing that they like because they can see what's going on. At any time, they can actually, depending on what screen you've got, you can actually hit your camera button and have a look and see what's going on at the front door. On the i56A, you could do multiple cameras because you can just set up the touch screen up to have multiple camera access if you so wish. Inside your apartment, we could go a little bit crazy because we start working out, well, okay, so you're going to have all these devices. How are we going to do it? Well, don't forget that the Fanvil's got hotspot, okay? And no, it's not a wireless hotspot. That's not what it is. Basically, it allows you to have one single registration on a master device, and any of the devices can be a master device. Then I believe you can have up to 6 off the top of my head. Phones internally that will ring at the same time and can ring out at the same time, and first and best dressed will answer. Now that includes your i50 series, the screens. So they're the same thing. So in this example here, I've got 2 of them, an i53W and an i56A. They would ring on incoming calls, and whoever answers first will get the video stream. The H5W at the back of the apartment, that'll also get a video screen. So yes, I'm over ramping the screens and phones a bit, but the whole point being is that you could have a, if it's a hotel, you could have a IPVX extension in there. If it's a apartment, you can register your one phone to your main SIP number for that particular resident, and the hotspot will just work behind that. No problems at all. It works with a telco as well as it would work with a PABX. So think about that one. And it's totally non-PABX dependent, which is quite handy, and or telco dependent to get that feature working. This is a site access solution. It's a large warehouse with lots of gates on it. There's the post you can see there to the right-hand side. It's basically a car and truck pillar. It's got its own little swipey thing in there and PIN numbers and all sorts of things, but it's got the two I-18s, okay? So the truck driver can just lean out if they're in trouble or whatever, can push the button, same with the car. As I said, in this particular site, there's 5 of these things. The reseller actually even got the post designed himself, and just set them up. In today's environment, that's not too hard to do, I guess. So again, that was just an I-18S. They were using a PC app to receive the video, and they're also using Fanvil phones of whatever models they wanted. And again, you can have multiple phones ringing, again, first and best dressed to get the call and video. This is an I-10 type solution. I sort of indicated that we can use them for nurse call, and yes, we can. We've had nurse calls, as I said, modify and rip these things apart. But in a doctor's waiting room, we've been using them as just a patient call unit, okay? So they press the button, it goes to the nurse station, they say, oh, my mother's not feeling well, or, you know, where's the nurse or whatever. Just saves patients wandering around the place. And it's connected to the PBX or whatever you've got running at the time. We've, the reason I've got the I-12 here is because some doctor surgeries perhaps aren't as nice as this doctor surgery. And some of the patients perhaps are a little bit rough. Maybe it's an A&E on a Saturday night. And some guy says, yes, I can put my fist through that AP, that unit right there. And he does on the I-10, but unfortunately the I-12 would put up just a tad more resistance for him. And he would need the doctor urgently again. We've used them as help points in warehouse shops and grocery shops, basically so that they simply, instead of, in the old days, they had like a buzzer that used to buzz out the back. Nowadays, you can't do that so much because staffing issues, etc. Or you might be, you know, the staff members have been dragged away. So they press the button again, go for an inquiry, and off you go. Now, if you're in like a produce area or a meat area, fish area, the I-12 probably has been metal, etc. is better because you can wipe it down. Okay, so, and again, with this COVID thing, you know, just because they're designed for the outside, don't think you can't use them on the inside. And because they are moisture resistant, the IP65 rated, you can wipe them down very easily. Stainless steel, they're well designed. They don't look out of place, I assure you. They do not look out of place. Here's another one we actually put together about a week ago. I don't know why, but they saw this thing. And I don't know if you've probably noticed it around your area. You've got these people in shops locking themselves behind screens. This is the best screen I could find as an example. But they're literally airtighting themselves off inside a screen because of COVID. So we sat down and we worked out that we could take 2 I-10s, we could connect them together on a PoE switch, anything from a 2-port or whatever, just something that would drive them. And we could peer-to-peer them. E.g., you press a button, it rings the other phone, and it automatically answers, and it stays open for whatever time you programmed it for, or if you press the button, it hangs up. So people can't hear conversations inside and outside. And basically all it was 2 cables coming up from beneath the bench, and one was mounted on the outside and one was mounted on the inside. That's it. That's simple. Put a little sign under it, press here, and there's your anti-COVID disease type screen. It's simple, it's reliable, and actually it's commercial, which is a key thing. Yes, can you go to like a cheap electronics store and get something that may do a similar thing? Yes. But we're not talking a huge amount of money for this thing, for a PoE switch and two i10s. And sound quality is good because it's commercial range. So again, I'm just trying to give you more ideas to have a think about how you can use the products. This works. It's deployed. It's not a problem. And I'm hoping the reseller will continue growing it. You sound like you got COVID. Okay, so in shopping malls, again, we can do a monitoring center. We can have help points at any, so say, for example, around the building. Now, I don't know if you heard, but a number of probably months now. Time flies when you're locked up for 3 months. A number of months ago, we had a guy walk into a West Auckland food shopping place and then decided that he was going to pull out a knife and start stabbing as many people as he could. Okay, he was a total nutter. There's no doubt about it. Why do we know he's a nutter? Because he had an police escort that he didn't know following him and were able to run in and shoot him. So taxpayers' money at work there. But in all seriousness, if there are situations now, I don't know if you've noticed it, there are getting to be a lot of angry people around, whether they're on aircraft or just around the place. People are getting frustrated and they're perhaps not as patient as they would be. So if a staff member is sitting there serving at any sort of situation, or is an area that they know that there is a phone that they can just go to and punch a button and it's going to call somebody. Now, if you put you can put voice or a voice and video there so that the person at the other end could see what's actually going on if necessary and can send down security and or help as necessary. Again, build these scenarios of what is actually happening out there and how we can actually address it. You've got a car park underneath there. What if a lady is down there and she's trying to get into a car, then suddenly some goons or start, giving her a hard time or coming towards her, and she might be freaking out? Have some help points scattered around the car park, labeled clearly. It's another solution. It's something to think, and it pays to use the word health and safety, because that's particularly when we start talking about paging in another couple of weeks. It's going to be health and safety is everything, and you can either go in there and sell phones and just keep the very standard solution, or enhance your sale by adding to it as much as you can. It's taken you as much time to get that customer to be interested in your initial solution, whatever it is. By adding value above and beyond your competition, you're building up more of a sale, more value for your time, and naturally more money. Okay, so we've got the intercoms and unmanned scenarios, again, where it be car parks, etc. I'll start accelerating a bit. I know you'll be just about coming up to an hour. And you can use them in conjunction with security cameras, etc., so that they'll actually even trigger the security camera above them to record or whatever, depends what you want to do. But health and safety in a warehouse, for example, a big warehouse, some of these things are absolutely huge. Where's your call point? What happens if something happens to somebody who's working alone or isolated in a warehouse? Not all of them have got radios, not all of them have got Wi-Fi phones. So where's the emergency point that they can call to get help because something's fallen on some guy, or he's got himself into manufacturing and got his hand fed into the machine, or something along the lines like that? Yes, they can stop the emergency stuff, but who can actually call and say, right, this is what's happened. I need an ambulance, I need this, I need that. I need the forklift to lift this thing off this person, or whatever. So just work through different scenarios that you're going to be going into. Again, an example of a car park scenario has got help points in it, this one. We were pitching this towards an Auckland car park, but we actually, because it was going to be unattended, we actually threw the PA2 in on the gate so that they could call remotely. They had cash machines, the little ticket machines you got to pay, and credit cards and everything. They had the Fanvil Intercom unit sitting there next to them, so in case they get into trouble and call for help. And the gate controllers, they could open up the gate controls via the PA2 by simply ringing it, because it was on a SIP extension. So they could just ring it and trigger it to open it instead of the people opening it if they wanted, if they saw that perhaps it was a granny or something stuck at the gate. So this goes into more talking about the managed car park. So we've talked a bit about that. Intercoms for campuses for exactly the same reason I'm explaining to you that you'd need it for a business, a supermarket, help points, call points, classrooms. We have got a lot of, in the old days, we used to have phones in classrooms, right? And teachers are getting, well, they have been in some areas anyway, definitely more hassled, shall we say. And if some little thug decides he wants to have a go at the teacher, the first thing he's probably going to do if there's a phone in the place is walk up to it and tear it off the wall, right? Like him to see him do that to an I-12 bolted to the wall. And all the teacher has to do is hit the panic button. They know that's what it is. People can talk and see what's going on. There's been any number of examples of teachers getting hurt at schools. So if you go into a school, you're going to be talking about intercoms, particularly now in security in buildings. You're going to be talking about health and safety in classrooms. You're going to be talking about paging naturally, and that, of course, all builds into an IPv6. Okay, so you've got your large universities all the way through to small schools. There was a Christian school just down the road from us that got 30 IP phones chucked in it. It actually got a media server chucked in, which actually was another brand unit, but that managed the evacuation and bell cycles and all that sort of thing. And all that went through some PA speakers on the outside, but inside the classrooms, they were actually broadcasting through the I-12s using multicast. Again, another example down here, we've got help posts. They're a big thing that are happening overseas now. They're just a post in the middle of certain parts of the university that if they get in trouble, it's got lights all around it and cameras and a call unit, of course. So again, we're talking about your classroom here. Here are your options if you wanted, instead of just using a phone like an X3U or something like that, you can use an I-10, I-12, or an I-16V with the camera. Okay, that could have a camera or non-camera version, but that's going to be more for your not so bad schools. But if you're looking for something more robust, or again, you're worried about the COVID, people touching it and wanting to have wipe down, you use one of these units here. And again, we're talking about multicast around various rooms and in classrooms. Emergency intercoms on highways and motorways. Just bear in mind, guys, that these are getting old now, the old units they've got, so they're going to start needing replacement. Everyone's turning off their copper everywhere. They're either put gateways at the front of it, so you're going to of a PABX, or they're doing something to stead it on for a little bit longer. But bottom line is that they've got to be replaced. So don't rule out any opportunity you might come across. Again, goes back to a central point. Industrial park, same thing. You have your access control all the way through it, various security aspects. I won't dwell on this one. We've just about thrashed that one to death. But even in your villa, you know, a lot of people have got money. They've got a villa, they want gate phones, they want security pins so that the gardener can come in and mow the lawns and the people can do the hedges. They might want the panels in the living room. So effectively, it's just like an apartment or a hotel room. What do you want? And whoopsie, yeah, sorry. So what do you actually want? So don't rule out the houses now. Again, the Fanvil is actually very well priced, but it's a proper commercial product. Are there things cheaper than a Fanvil? Yes. Are they put as well together? No, because when it boils down to it, you want to install it and let it go. And that's it. So in summary, what we've been trying to say here is that the IP, the intercom, the I-series range, yes, they're door phones. And in the past, we would have said, well, yeah, we only need one door phone here. We might only need one there. But in today's world, we need more. We need them at gates, we need them at car parks, we need them at front doors, we need them at unattended reception areas. We need them in secure parts of a building, your IT rooms, etc. For security, you would have somebody who has got a card or a PIN number to swipe in so you know who's been and when, so you know who was in the IT room before the entire phone system crashed or something along those lines. I mean, how many times has someone unplugged a phone system? When you're talking, or even the server accidentally while servicing the phone system, it has happened. If on a sales perspective, what the bottom line is it's getting tough out there. Margins are going down, and the competitiveness is just incredible. You're fighting against telcos because they're wanting money, so they're beginning to drag themselves back down into the SME market, and as well as trying to look after corporate ends. You've got a huge amount of competition, there's a huge amount of products out there, but it's how you apply the products and how you sell the story. I mean, when